Hello, Wonderhussy here. I'm all dressed up in my archaeologist outfit because I'm about to check out a place I've been curious about for a long time. Okay, you might be able to see in the distance there is Interstate 15, which is the main highway that runs from LA to Vegas, and I'm about halfway between LA and Vegas at a place called the Calico Early Man Archaeological Site. That's why I'm dressed up as an archaeologist. I've driven past this sign dozens of times on my way to and from LA, Vegas, and I never bothered to stop because I thought it would be boring. You know, some archaeological sites, some archaeologists found some old bones in the desert. Big deal. But then I started reading about it online and come to find out there's all this weird controversy. So I thought, okay, I'll come check it out. But when I looked it up online, it said the BLM, that's the Bureau of Land Management, shut it down in 2017 because of vandalism. But the drama and intrigue surrounding this site was interesting enough that I felt like it was still worth coming out here, even if I can't actually get to the site itself, because it's a weird story. So I did some research, planned my trip to come out here, and imagine my surprise when I read that they just reopened it. That's right, the gates unlocked and the site has been reopened, I think as of about a month ago. I'm shooting this video on April 5th and I think it reopened like March 3rd, and I just randomly happened to read that online and it made my day, because now that means I can go to the site itself and tell you the story of what transpired at the Calico Early Man site. Okay, cool, look at this. It's an interpretive trail, but it looks like no one's been here for about 1,000 years. Okay, first thing I'm gonna look at is there's some kind of memorial here, and the sun's kind of bright on it, so it might be kind of hard to read, but it's a memorial placed by the United Mining Councils of America for Mr. Glenn Gunn, the former holder of these claims. Interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and speculate that what happened was this guy, Glenn Gunn, owned a mining claim out in this area, and then they found these archaeological artifacts or whatever out here, and then, well, next thing you know, the federal government came in and whisked the mining claim away from Mr. Glenn Gunn. And when you hear the details of what ended up happening here, well, you might feel kind of peeved on his behalf. Anyway, the memorial's way over there on the edge of the parking area. I think the main stuff is over here, and golly, these signs are all so sun-baked that you can hardly read them, but it looks like it used to say guided tours leave from here Wednesdays, Thursday through Sunday, self-guided trail brochure available at register. There is no register anywhere around here, and I'm gonna go ahead and take a wild guess that there hasn't been a guided tour since 1973. Anyway, the first thing I notice here is this big signpost pointing the direction to all these different archaeological sites in America. And I'm not really a big archaeology fan, to be honest, so I don't know or haven't heard of a lot of these places. Old Crow Basin, Toca dos Buzios, Tlapacoya, but Santa Rosa Island I have heard of. And matter of fact, I read about it in the course of my research for this video. Okay, the story of Calico Early Man Archaeological Site pretty much started in 1959 when this lady archaeologist from Southern California named Ruth Simpson was digging around out here and found what she thought were stone tools used by prehistoric peoples as long ago as like 100,000 years. And she brought it to the attention of Louis Leakey, if you know who that is. Okay, as we're walking along, there are these informational signs, but they're so sun-baked and old. All this says is wear a hat, carry water, be careful. Okay, check, check, and check. Anyway, back to my story. Ruth Simpson brought this little stone tool to the attention of Louis Leakey, who, if you know anything about archaeology, I guess he's one of the most famous archaeologists of the 20th century. He was in the middle of doing this big dig in Tanzania, you know, on like super early man. And I guess he came back to the United States for something, and Ruth Simpson went and saw him talk and showed him this stone tool she had found out in the Mojave Desert, just a little bit north of Barstow. And Louis Leakey was totally intrigued. I don't know how they dated this thing to be 100,000 years old, but by some estimates, it was even considered to be maybe 200,000 years old. Either way, that's way older than any other archaeological evidence that was ever found of history of man in North America. I guess most archaeologists agree that the first native peoples, or I guess they weren't native because they came from Asia. You know how the whatever you call them, prehistoric peoples migrated from Asia over that land bridge that formed during the Ice Age. You could walk from Russia to Alaska back in those days because it was covered in ice. And that's when the first humans migrated to North America. Well, that was thought to be between, I think, 15 and 20,000 years ago. So finding a stone tool used by humans 100,000 years ago, or even 200,000 years ago, would be a pretty big deal. Okay, walking along the trail here, now we come to some kind of other little monument. Oh, look, it's a monument to Ruth Simpson. That's the archaeologist I was just talking about. It says she was the Calico site director from 1972 to 2000, a singular voice in American archaeology. Obviously placed here by some friends of Ruth Simpson, and I'm sure she was a cool lady. In fact, she was probably super cool, but I think her archaeological findings were sort of discredited later in her life. But anyway, like it said on the thing, she was the site director from 1972 to 2000 because, well, that's what ended up happening. She got a hold of Leakey. He was intrigued, and he came out here and looked around, and he secured funding from the National Geographic Society. You know, National Geographic, the magazine. Matter of fact, I think there used to be a National Geographic flag flying here at one point because they bought it hook, line, and sinker. Oh man, we found this site where humans were living 100,000 years ago. Here's all the money you need. What does this say? Oh my God, it's so faded. Crew steps. The crew-only steps were built in 1963 by, can't really make it out, but there are some photos. You can see Dr. Louis Leakey making a cast. And then there's another picture there of Dr. Leakey and student. Looks like a nice, pretty young female student on top of it all. I think there might actually have been some Me Too allegations about Louis Leakey that came out recently. Like with everything. Apparently he was kind of a ladies' man and a philanderer, and well, he's kind of best known for having his trimates. Okay, he sponsored 3 famous female primate studiers. What do you call somebody who studies primates? Well, you know, Jane Goodall, the woman who studied chimpanzees, and Diane Fossey, the woman who studied gorillas in the mist, and then this third woman, I can't remember her name, Barute something, she studied orangutans. And anyway, between the 3 of them sometimes they were called his trimates, sometimes they were called Leakey's angels. Anyway, he was just that kind of guy who, I guess, always had an eye for the ladies. And even though I couldn't read what they were talking about with those crew steps, I think these are them up here. There's these old stone steps. Looks like somebody carved their name in one of them. Doesn't that say word or wart? And then this one here says, did you? Oh gosh, now I feel like an archaeologist trying to make out what it says on these old rocks. Oh, it looks like it starts at the bottom of these stairs. Hold on. It's also hard to see in the light right now, but it looks like it says, hi-ho, hi-ho. It's, I bet that said off to work. Work I go. Did you tackle? And then, well, unfortunately, the steps completely degrade the farther up we go. So the rest of the mystery, I can sort of see a little bit of a word there, is lost to history. Whoa, I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but that's kind of cool. This mystery is basically, well, not lost to history. Thanks to people like me, I did all the research for you, so you don't have to do all the reading. I'll tell you exactly what happened here. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, Ruth Simpson showed this little stone tool to Louis Leakey, the philandering ladies' man, boss man of archaeology. I mean, he was at the top of his game in 1959. And so when they started their dig here in 1963, it was a big friggin' deal. If evidence of man from 100,000 years ago was found here, well, that just blows everything out of the water. Because like I said, people didn't think that anyone had come to North America prior to 20,000 years ago. So 100,000 years ago, that's a game changer. Prior to that, the oldest human evidence or artifacts that had been found in North America or in the United States were something called the Arlington Springs Man, which was found on the Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California on Santa Rosa Island, like that sign was pointing to. Apparently a skeleton was found on Santa Rosa Island that was dated to be 13,000 years old. And at that time, and I think still to this day, that is the oldest confirmed human remains ever found in North America. So if they could find, imagine if they could find bones of prehistoric humans from 100,000 years ago, or even 200,000 years ago here, woo, that would be a big friggin' deal. And that would put little old Barstow, which is only about 15 miles south of here, on the map, so to speak, and finally give some academic status to the poor, beleaguered, often forgotten, and the butt of many jokes, Mojave Desert. Okay, so that was stop number 2, the cruise steps. Let's keep walking along this path and see what's at stop number 3. Anyway, unfortunately, I don't think they ever found any human remains here at the Calico Early Man Site. And I should note, the reason it's called the Calico Early Man Site is, well, they found evidence of early man right here. I think it's in the Calico Basin or near the Calico Basin. There's a real famous ghost town called Calico not far from here, and I think the hills behind it are called like the Calico Hills. So that's why it's called the Calico Early Man Site. But unfortunately, no real evidence of early man was found. No bones, no animal bones, no evidence of humans other than these weird little stone tools. They look like little, God, there's some name for it. Biface, I think that's it. Biface, like 2 faces. It's kind of like a triangular shaped piece of rock that I guess prehistoric men, cavemen, if you will, would, be able to grasp it in their hand and use it to, scrape meat off bones or bang pinyon pine nuts out of the shells or whatever the case. It was called a biface, and I think that's the kind of stone tools that were found here. Stop 3, bentonite mine. Oh wow, far out. Bentonite, that's the stuff I use for that mud I'm always putting on my face. I always have that green slop on my face in half my videos. Well, that's bentonite clay, and apparently this used to be a bentonite mine, which is very interesting because it says it's an open pit mine that was dug by Glenn Gunn for bentonite. Oh, look, there's like this little bench up here where I guess you're supposed to sit and take a break and contemplate the view ahead of you, which is of old Glenn Gunn's bentonite mine. And gosh, I guess somewhere out there is where they found that first stone tool, which I should note is where the drama started. People weren't even really sure that it was a stone tool. Okay, I guess there's a difference between artifacts and geofacts. This is something else, another fact I learned in the course of my research for this video. Okay, an artifact is something that was made by humans, indisputably made by humans. So you find like a really old stone axe or an old arrowhead that's very obviously carved or chipped away by humans. That's an artifact. Then there's something else called a geofact, which is basically just like a rock, kind of like this here, that, well, it kind of looks like it was, it could have been, carved by humans to be pointed like that and do something. But realistically, this is just a rock shaped like a triangle, and, it's naturally that way from whatever volcanic explosion threw it up into the air and it bounced on the ground, and that's how it got these sharp ridge lines. Now, this could be used as a tool by humans, but it wasn't made by a human. So that is called a geofact. And I guess that's what a lot of archaeologists thought all these stone biface tools really were. They weren't convinced. I don't know, 100,000-year-old hand axe. I think these stones are naturally occurring. Okay, let's keep taking this trail and see where it goes next. Anyway, I guess not all archaeologists poo-pooed it though. Like, there were a lot of archaeologists that were gung-ho about this site. Of course, Louis Leakey and Ruth Simpson. But then there was also this guy who came out here and he thought that this site was even older than even 200,000 years old. He dated it somehow to like 500,000 years old. Okay, 500,000 years old. If there was a record of human existence from 500,000 years ago, that's older than any human remains or artifacts found anywhere, even in Africa. And so you know how the current theory, I guess, is that human life evolved in Africa and then kind of spread out from there? Well, if a site in the old Mojave Desert just north of Barstow was found to have evidence from half a million. Wait, 500,000 is 500,000, right? Yeah, 500,000 years ago? Well, that would just blow everything out of the water. That would mean that human life, as we know it, originated in North America, not Africa. It would basically mean everything started in Barstow. Looks like now we're coming up to the main archaeological dig site. And unfortunately, I think that's what got vandalized too back in 2017. Well, I guess we'll find out. Oh my gosh, wow, this is so interesting. It's like this creepy, abandoned archaeology site. It's also very meta. Like I'm doing an archaeological expedition of an archaeological expedition site. So there's stairs going up, and I'll go up those in a minute, but let me go look what's through here first. This looks like it was maybe a pit where they were digging stuff up, and so they had it fenced off. And then there was a locked gate, but well, the fence is totally torn away, and it doesn't say not to go in, although there is terrifyingly part of somebody's pant leg cut off here. I don't know, man. I'm gonna go peek in, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for doing this. I don't think they really care anymore because this site has basically been discredited as being fake. Oh wow, look, looks like an old broom. You know how these archaeologists do? They like sweep the dust away very carefully with like a toothbrush, or I guess in this instance with a broom. Oh my goodness. Oh wow, there's a huge bird in here. And I noticed it's a really big... Oh, did you get trapped in here, buddy? Oh no. Oh, well, you know how to get out. There's a hole in the gate. Yikes, can you imagine if that thing got mad at me for being in here with that giant beak? Maybe it's like that website, Birds Are Real, and it's actually not a bird. It's a drone, a BLM drone. And they sent it here to chase me out of here. There's its fake BLM drone nest. Well, anyway, there's really nothing in here. I mean, this is just where they were digging stuff up years and years ago. Now it's trashed, and the pits look like they're sort of filled in with debris. But gosh, you can see, I mean, from the depth of these walls, this is how far they dug down when they were in hot pursuit of these little stone hand tools. Okay, BLM drone, I'm gonna get out of here now, and I'll just go up top. I think we can probably see through the bottom anyways. God, this is wild up here. Look at this. I mean, there's like staircases and sluices, and it looks like a mining operation, but all they were doing was digging up bones. I remember that Randy Travis song. Well, they weren't actually digging up bones here. They were just digging up stone tools, and I guess that was part of the problem. If they had found some bones here, well, then this place would probably be on the UNESCO World Heritage Fund site right now, and it'd be protected by a chain link fence, and there'd be tour buses coming all day and night, and there'd be a gift shop, and there'd be a restaurant, and well, you would have probably heard about it. Whoa, look at these are like the old abandoned, what do you call those things? Like sluices or shaker boxes, sifters, I guess. I mean, again, it doesn't say not to go down in here, but you know what I mean? Like you would pick this up with like dirt in it and then shake it back and forth, get rid of all the dirt, and like see if any little bone fragments or teeth or arrowheads or anything remained. It's wild because they're all just sort of laying here, helter-skelter, totally abandoned. But I think it's interesting how they put these really expensive grates on top of these pits. I mean, that's the pit we went in first where the bird was. And then on the other side of the staircase, this area here is just open. And it looks to me like they were digging there. I don't know why they didn't grate this over, but there's more grated over stuff up here. Oh, look, it looks like there was another sign, but it fell over. Let's see what this sign said. Master Pits 2 and 3. During his visit in 1967, Dr. Leakey requested a major pit be dug 40 feet northwest of Master Pit 1. This pit, known as Master Pit 2, is 15 feet square with a depth of 26 feet. Wow, so they were digging deeper and deeper, I guess, because the deeper you go, the older the soil is. And I guess that's how they dated these stone tools, you know. They dug through this one layer of earth that was from when there was, I guess there used to be a vast prehistoric lake here somewhere. So if it was like, you know, fine lake type soil, they knew it was from the period that the lake existed. And if it was below that, then they knew it was even older than the lake. And so that's basically how they were able to date these artifacts. I wonder if you can get in to this main pit now. Oh wow, yeah, you sure can. I mean, doors wide open. Golly, I sure hope I don't get in trouble doing this. I mean, I'm not hurting anything. I'm not stepping on anything. I'm just going to stay right on this little boardwalk that has this railing. I mean, this is where the archaeologists would have walked. You know, all them purty young college girls. You know what I mean? By the time they really got into the dig here, it was like the 60s. So all those beautiful 60s college girls with their long hair parted in the middle and their tight t-shirts with no bras. You guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, just for reference, we came in that gate there, we walked down this boardwalk, and now we're coming around a corner into, well, what we just walked on top of. This is so interesting. So now we're going in like 26 feet below the top, and it's cooler down here. Wow, can you imagine? Look, there was people down here digging and digging and digging. I mean, they dug all the way from up there, woo, clear down here. This is amazing. And then unfortunately there's some garbage here. People have been in here and haven't been as respectful as I'm being. I'm going to step right here where I think you're meant to step. I mean, were they like carving away in the side of the wall here trying to find stuff? Is that what was going on? Golly, I have no idea. Let's see what else we can see at this fascinating, unexpectedly fascinating early man site. Man, now I'm doubly bummed I never came out here. You know, if I'd come out here 15 years ago, there might have actually still been relevant signage here. Hi. Hi. Whoopsie, there's some other people here. Here I'm just blabbing to my camera thinking I was all alone in the middle of nowhere, when the sad fact of the matter is nowadays you can never be alone, no matter how far into the middle of nowhere you go. Anyway, this trail just sort of goes up top. I guess they had another dig site up here. There's another sign. Oh gosh, look, this sign is completely gone. So we'll never know what this sign said, but it says Master Pit 2 Stockpile. And I'm not really sure what that means, but there's long channels of rocks separated by wood. So it's like lanes full of rocks. I don't know why they would have done that. Okay, anyway, I don't even remember where I was at in my story, but Louis Leakey was out here. You know, one of the top, if not the top archaeologist in the world, Louis Leakey, was out here from 1963 until I think on and off through the rest of his life. He finally died in 1973, and I don't think he was able to work for at least a few years before his death because he was in poor health. He had arthritis. But I don't know, on and off for about 10 years, Louis Leakey worked this site, despite the fact that it was so controversial. And I guess back then even it was controversial, and people, well, a lot of people really had their doubts that these were actually stone tools and weren't just pointy rocks. But I guess Louis Leakey was convinced enough that he stayed out here until the end of his life, digging around, hoping he'd finally find that leg bone or whatever that vindicated the whole site. What did this say? No visitors beyond this point. Oh man, this is actually sad. I don't even know where that sign was. All right, I did. I climbed all the way to the top of the hill just so I could get a good overview of the entire area and maybe put some perspective on, you know, how they dated these artifacts to be a certain age. You know how I said, like, there used to be a prehistoric lake here? Well, I guess looking around the landscape today, well, you can kind of see there is a big dry lake bed over there, so maybe that was, or is, a remnant of the old prehistoric lake. Apparently this was all marshy, and I think there were trees, kind of boggy, much wetter environment than it is today, or than it was back in, you know, the 1960s when they were digging out that site down there where that other couple is poking around right now. And even though it did make me kind of self-conscious that people stumbled on me blundering around talking on my cell phone, I think it's really cool that somebody else actually showed up here. That being said, I didn't lock my car because I didn't think anybody would come out here. And well, you know what they say about the desert around Barstow. It's supposedly full of meth heads that'll steal anything that's not nailed down. In fact, I read one interview when they were talking about the vandalism here that said it was probably done by meth heads, you know, looking for something they could sell and buy meth, which maybe is true, but what are you going to get in an archaeological pit? I think the vandalism might have been related to the archaeological spat or drama surrounding this site. Okay, I didn't finish telling the story. So people were going back and forth as to, is this a real site? Isn't this a real site? And I guess, well, the controversy went on until Louis Leakey finally died in 1973. And matter of fact, I think his wife even left him over it. I don't know, she could have just left him because he was a philanderer and he's probably having 10 affairs, but she said in her own autobiography, the Calico excavation was catastrophic to his professional career and was largely responsible for the parting of our ways. So that sounds to me like she was blaming this Calico excavation site for breaking them up. And from everything else that I read, it kind of sounded like maybe she lost academic respect for him over this, and that's why they broke up. Like, maybe the philandering was bad enough, but you know, he was such a badass archaeologist and there was so much prestige involved with being married to him that she stuck it out until he finally got bogged down in this clunker of a fake archaeological boondoggle in the desert outside Barstow, and that was the last straw. You know what I mean? No more fancy dinner invitations, no more going to speak at universities around the world. It was all downhill after Leakey hitched his wagon to this mess. Anyway, I guess the current consensus in the scientific or archaeological community is that this is basically a big old nothing burger. This was not an early man site. The stone tools that were found were just geofacts. They were just pointy rocks. Everybody got all excited. Everybody got all their panties in a twist for nothing. I bet Louis Leakey loved getting panties in a twist. Anyway, the reason the current consensus is that this is a big old nothing burger, I guess it's kind of fourfold. First off, the time discrepancy is just so vast. Like I said, them suspecting that stuff here dated from 100, even 200, 500,000 years ago is just so different from the accepted timeline of humans first coming into North America 15, 20,000 years ago. That's just such a vast discrepancy that already kind of discredits it. That's one. Two, the fact that there were no bones ever found here, whether human or animal, or any other signs of human habitation other than these stone tools. That was the second reason people kind of were suspicious. Thirdly, I guess they found so many of these stone tools. I mean, I think I read that they found something like 60,000 examples of these little bifaced stone hand axe tools. 60,000. Now, why would there be a site, a pit, if you will, in the middle of the desert with 60,000 hand axes in it, but nary a human bone or an animal bone or any other signs of human habitation? Anyway, the fourth and final nail in the coffin for this site was the fact that the stone tools that were found, I guess, were kind of proven by other archaeologists to be geofacts. Now, how can you really prove something as an artifact or a geofact? Well, sometimes it's kind of subjective, but I guess there is a way or some kind of methodology they use where they measure. This is really in the weeds. So like with an arrowhead, you know how with an arrowhead there's those little like flakes on the side, like chipped away areas where you could see somebody chipped it away, and there's probably a name for it. I'm not an archaeologist, but whatever those little impressions are, those little chop marks, we'll call them, with these stone tools that were found here, if the chop marks are more than 90 degrees, or there's something to do with the angle of the chop marks, if a certain percentage of them are more than 90 degrees, then that indicates that it's just a naturally occurring thing. And if it's less than that, then that means, yeah, okay, maybe it was man-made. I don't know. Believe it or not, there is some weird, complicated methodology to proving or disproving that something is a geofact versus an artifact. And that's probably subjective too. I'm sure there was plenty of controversy surrounding that, but I guess most of the archaeological community agreed, or still agrees, that all 60,000 of these friggin' stone tools found out here were just pointy rocks. Wah, wah, wah. Okay, so after all this, I do feel bad for the Leakeys, and I do feel bad for Ruth Simpson. But the real loser in all of this was Glenn Gunn. All he wanted to do was mine his bentonite in peace, and he got booted off by these fancy archaeologists coming out here with their big city college degrees. Like, oh, no, you can't dig up bentonite clay here. There were early humans living here. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Gunn, but your loss was everybody's gain.